I pulled into the driveway of our little house in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, the sun dipping low behind the pines. It was my 20th birthday, and I'd spent the day at the community college library, cramming for a history exam. My backpack was heavy, my keys jangled in my hand, and all I wanted was to collapse on my bed. But as I stepped out of the car, my world tilted. My life was scattered across the front lawn like garbage after a storm. Clothes, crumpled and muddy, spilled out of a torn trash bag. My laptop case, zipper half open, lay near the mailbox. Books I'd highlighted to death were splayed open, pages flapping in the breeze. And there, draped over the edge of a cardboard box like some cruel joke, was the quilt my mom, Lisa, had stitched for me when I was 9. I froze, my breath catching in my throat, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out the hum of cicadas. I stood there, keys biting into my palm, backpack sliding off my shoulder. My eyes traced the mess, landing on a pair of my underwear, bright red, hooked on a shrub like a flag of surrender. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stand there, but my feet wouldn't move. Then I saw her. Sarah, my dad's new wife, lounged on the porch, legs crossed, a glass of white wine in her hand. It was barely 4 in the afternoon, but she sipped like it was midnight. Her eyes met mine, cool and unblinking, like a cat watching a mouse. "Happy birthday, Emily," she said, her voice dripping with syrupy sweetness. A pause, just long enough to sting. "You're 20 now. Time to grow up. Time to move on." I opened my mouth, but no words came. "My name is Emily." That's all I could think, over and over like a prayer. My name is Emily. And in that moment, I realized the truth, sharp and cold as a blade. My dad, David, hadn't just married a new woman. He'd handed her the keys to my entire life, and she'd set it on fire. I felt the weight of it, the betrayal, sinking into my bones. My eyes flicked back to the lawn, to the quilt, its careful stitches now streaked with dirt. My mom's hands had made that. Her hands, gone now, taken by cancer 3 years ago. And Sarah, this stranger, had tossed it out like it meant nothing. I forced my legs to move, slow steps toward the pile, my sneakers crunching on the gravel. Behind the screen door, I heard Mia, Sarah's daughter, laugh a high, sharp sound that sent a shiver down my spine. I ignored it, kneeling beside the mess, my fingers brushing a notebook, its cover bent, Lisa's handwriting scrawled on the first page. My journal, where I'd poured out every grief, every hope, since Mom died. It was wedged under a crumpled soda can, sticky and damp. I pulled it free, clutching it to my chest, my throat tight. "What the hell is this?" I said, my voice trembling, barely above a whisper. Sarah didn't move from her perch. She tilted her head, her blonde hair catching the fading light. "House rules, Emily," she said, shrugging one shoulder. "You're not a kid anymore. We need the space." Her lips curled into a smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "For what?" I shot back, louder now, my voice cracking. I stood, fists clenched, the journal still pressed against me. Her smile widened, sharp enough to cut. "Mia's getting her own art studio. And Ethan, well, he needs a proper gaming setup. You understand." I glanced up at the house, catching a flicker of movement at the window. Ethan, Sarah's son, peered through the curtains, his face pale, his eyes darting away when I looked at him. Typical Ethan, always watching, never speaking. I turned back to Sarah, my blood boiling. "Where's my dad?" She took a slow sip of wine, letting the question hang. "At the hardware store in Decatur. Working late." Another pause, deliberate. "He agrees, Emily. This is for the best." I wanted to call it lies, to scream that my dad would never do this, but the words caught in my throat. David hadn't been himself for months, not since Sarah moved in with her perfect nails and her fake laugh. He'd become a shadow, avoiding my eyes, mumbling excuses whenever Sarah rearranged our lives. I looked down at the lawn again, at the pieces of me scattered there, and something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to cry, not in front of her. Sarah thrived on tears, on chaos. She wanted me to break. Instead, I bent down, grabbing my laptop case and the quilt, folding it carefully despite the dirt. My hands shook, but I kept my face blank. Without a word, I turned and walked down the street, the private path to the park just beyond our cul-de-sac. I didn't look back, not even when I heard Mia's laugh again, fainter now. I made it to a bench under a sprawling oak, the same one where Mom and I used to sit, eating ice cream and watching squirrels. I sank onto it, the quilt in my lap, my chest heaving. And then, alone, with no one to see, I let the tears come, hot and silent, soaking into the fabric Mom had made. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my friend Alex. "Happy birthday. Want to hit the diner for some cake?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, but I couldn't reply. Not yet. I leaned back, tilting my head to the sky, the first stars just starting to peek through. I breathed, slow and deep, trying to push down the anger, the hurt, the humiliation. And then, like a whisper, I remembered something. A promise. An envelope. Something Mom had left me, something I hadn't thought about until now. I sat on that park bench in Atlanta, the quilt heavy in my lap, my tears drying in the cool evening air. The oak tree above me rustled, its leaves whispering memories I couldn't shake. My mind drifted back, pulling me into the past, to the days when it was just me and Dad, David, trying to stitch our lives together after Mom, Lisa, slipped away. Cancer had taken her 3 years ago, leaving a hole so big it swallowed our laughter, our late-night talks, our everything. For a while, it was just us, broken but holding on. He'd burn pancakes in our little kitchen, and I'd scrub the dishes, both of us pretending we were okay. We'd cry sometimes, right there over the sink, not saying a word. At night, we'd watch old rom-coms, tossing popcorn at the screen when the endings got too sappy. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Then Sarah came. She showed up a year ago, all glossy hair and practiced smiles, like she'd stepped out of a magazine ad. At first, she played nice, complimenting my curly hair, asking about my classes at the community college, even offering to fold my laundry. But every word had a hook, every smile a shadow. I'd catch her watching me, her eyes sharp, calculating, like she was measuring how much space I took up. It started small. She rearranged the living room one weekend, claiming it needed a woman's touch. Mom's favorite armchair, the one with the faded floral pattern, got dragged to the garage. "It's just clutter, Emily," Sarah said when I asked, her voice light but edged with steel. I didn't fight it then. I should have. Bit by bit, she erased Mom. Photos vanished from the walls, one here, one there, like they'd never existed. I'd find them later, stuffed in drawers or buried in boxes. Once, I pulled a framed picture of Mom and me at Piedmont Park from the recycling bin, its glass cracked, her smile still bright despite the coffee stains. When I confronted Sarah, she blinked, all innocence. "Oh, honey, I thought we agreed to freshen things up." Lisa wouldn't want the house to feel like a museum, would she? The way she said Mom's name, like she had any right to it, made my skin crawl. She didn't know Lisa. She didn't deserve to speak her name. Dad saw it happening, but he did nothing. He'd shuffle in from the hardware store, shoulders slumped, eyes avoiding mine. Since Sarah moved in, he'd turned hollow, like someone had scooped out his spine and replaced it with guilt. He'd mumble about work, about being tired, but never about the way Sarah was rewriting our home. I tried talking to him once, late at night, when Sarah was out with her book club. "Dad, she's throwing Mom's stuff away," I said, my voice small. He stared at the floor, hands clasped tight. "Emily, it's complicated. Sarah's just trying to make this place hers too. Complicated." That was his excuse for letting her chip away at us. Sarah's kids, Mia and Ethan, didn't help. Mia, 17, treated the house like her personal stage, blasting music and leaving her makeup smeared on the bathroom counter. She'd smirk when she caught me picking up Mom's things, like she knew her mom was winning. Ethan, 15, was quieter, always glued to his phone, but he'd watch everything, his eyes flicking away when I looked at him. They moved in like they owned the place, and I became the outsider, tiptoeing in my own home. 3 weeks ago, it got worse. I came home from class and went to Mom's old bookshelf, where I kept her photo album snapshots of our trips to Savannah, my 10th birthday, her trying to look strong even when chemo left her pale. It was gone. I tore through the house, heart racing, until I found it in the garage, stuffed in a trash bag, buried under soggy paper towels and banana peels. I pulled it out, hands shaking, the leather covered, damp, but intact. Sarah swore she hadn't touched it. Maybe it got mixed up with some junk, she said, not even looking at me. I didn't believe her. I stopped believing anything she said. Now, sitting on that bench, the memory of that album burned in my chest. I clutched the quilt tighter. It stitches a lifeline to Mom. My phone buzzed again, another text from Alex, probably wondering why I hadn't answered. I ignored it, my eyes drifting to the mess still littering the lawn, visible even from here. Sarah hadn't just crossed a line today, she'd obliterated it. And Mia's laugh, that chilling sound from behind the screen door, echoed in my head. I could still see Sarah on the porch, wine glass in hand, her words cutting deeper than I'd let her know. Time to move on. Move on? This was my home. Mom's home. And Sarah thought she could just erase us. I stood, wiping my face, the quilt draped over my arm. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Anger was taking over, hot and steady, pushing out the hurt. I started back toward the house, my steps firm on the cracked sidewalk. Sarah wanted space? Fine. But she wasn't going to get it by throwing my life on the lawn. I thought of Dad, of how he'd let this happen, and my stomach twisted. He wasn't the man who'd held me when Mom died, who'd promised we'd get through it together. He was someone else now, someone who let Sarah call the shots. As I neared the house, I saw Mia through the living room window, sprawled on the couch, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. Ethan's shadow moved upstairs, probably hiding in his room. Sarah was still on the porch, her wine glass empty now, her eyes locking onto me as I approached. "Back so soon," she said, her tone mocking. I didn't answer. I stepped over my scattered clothes, my books, my memories, and kept walking toward the front door. "Don't make a scene, Emily," she called after me. "You're only embarrassing yourself." I paused, my hand on the doorknob, my back to her. "This is my house," I said, my voice low but steady. I didn't wait for her reply. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, the smell of her perfume sickly sweet, like overripe peaches hitting me like a wave. Mia looked up, her smirk fading for a split second before she went back to her phone. I ignored her and headed for the stairs, the quilt still in my arms, my journal tucked under it. Sarah could play her games, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I stood in the hallway of our Atlanta house, the quilt still draped over my arm, my journal pressed against my chest. The air felt thick, heavy with Sarah's perfume and the weight of what had just happened. My stuff was still out there, scattered on the lawn, but I couldn't face it yet. My legs carried me upstairs, past Mia's smug glance from the couch, past the faint sound of Ethan's video game leaking through his bedroom door. I slipped into my roomy room, for now, and shut the door, leaning against it, my breath uneven. The pale blue walls, the ones Mom and I had painted when I was 15, stared back at me, but everything else felt wrong. The posters were gone, the bookshelf half empty, the bed stripped to a bare mattress. Sarah's doing, no doubt. I sank onto the floor, the quilt pulling around me, and let my head tip back against the door. My heart was still racing, not from fear anymore, but from something else. Anger, maybe, or resolve. Then it hit me, sharp and sudden, like a light flickering on. The envelope. 2 months ago, at a Sunday brunch in Marietta, my grandmom's mom had pressed it into my hand as we said goodbye in her driveway. Her grip was firm, her eyes serious. "Emily, don't open this until your 20th birthday," she'd said, her voice low, almost a whisper. Your mom wanted you to have it. Promise me. I'd nodded, confused but obedient, and tucked it into my desk drawer when I got home. I hadn't thought about it since, buried under the chaos of school and Sarah's takeover. But now, sitting here, the memory burned. Today was my birthday. Today was the day. I scrambled to my feet, dropping the quilt and journal on the bed. My desk was a mess, papers and pens shoved aside by Mia's makeup bagged bin in here, of course. I yanked open the top drawer, digging through receipts and old sticky notes until my fingers brushed the envelope. There it was, slightly creased but intact, my name scrawled across it in Mom's bold, slanted handwriting. Emily. Just seeing it made my throat tighten, like she was right there, her voice soft but strong, calling me from across the years. I sat on the edge of the bed, the envelope trembling in my hands, and tore it open with careful, shaky fingers. Inside were three things. A folded letter, a single sheet of paper that looked official, all crisp and typed, and a small silver key, cold against my palm. I started with the letter, unfolding it slowly, my pulse loud in my ears. Mom's words filled the page, each one like a heartbeat. Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to fight for you. I'm sorry, baby. I wanted to give you so much more, but life had other plans. I'll keep this short. This house isn't Sarah's. It's not your dad's either. It's yours. Starting today. The papers in here prove it. Talk to Aunt Rachel. She'll know what to do. I love you always. Mom. I read it again, then again, the words blurring as my eyes stung. The house was mine. Mine. I grabbed the other paper, the official one, and scanned it, my breath catching. It was a trust agreement, legal and binding, naming me, Emily Marie Carter, as the sole owner of the house at 1427 Maple Lane, Atlanta, Georgia, effective on my 20th birthday today. The words swam on the page, but one line stood out, bold and clear. Beneficiary, Emily Marie Carter. I pressed my hand to my mouth, a sob threatening to break free. Mom had done this. She'd known, somehow, that I'd need this, that Sarah would try to take everything. She'd fought for me, even when she was gone. The silver key glinted in my hand, its purpose a mystery. I turned it over, searching for a clue, but there was nothing, just smooth metal, small enough to fit a lock I didn't yet know. I set it on the bed, my mind racing. Sarah thought she'd won, sitting out there with her wine and her smug smile, but she had no idea what was coming. None of them did. I grabbed my phone, my fingers steady now, and dialed Aunt Rachel, Mom's older sister, the one who always showed up with coffee and no-nonsense advice. She answered on the second ring. Emily? You okay, kid? I swallowed, my voice low but firm. Mom left me the house. A pause, then a sharp exhale on her end. Good. You opened the envelope. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah. Sarah kicked me out, Rachel. On my birthday. My stuff's on the lawn. Another pause, longer this time. That woman, she said, her voice tight with anger. You've got the papers, right? I glanced at the trust agreement, still clutched in my hand. Yeah. Okay, listen to me, Rachel said, her tone shifting, all business. You go back in that house. You don't scream. You don't cry. You walk in there, you hand Sarah those papers, and you tell her she's got 30 days to get out. Not a day more, not a day less. Can you do that? I closed my eyes, picturing Sarah's face, her mocking laugh. My stomach twisted, but I thought of Mom's handwriting, her words. I love you, always. I can do it, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Good girl, Rachel said. Call me when it's done. She hung up, and I sat there, the phone still warm in my hand, the trust agreement heavy on my lap. I looked at the key again, then at the letter, rereading Mom's words. This house isn't Sarah's. It's yours. I stood, wiping my face, my jaw set. I didn't know if I was ready, but I wasn't going to let Sarah win. Not today. Not ever. I folded the papers carefully, tucking them into my journal, and slipped the key into my pocket. My room felt smaller now, like it was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. I opened the door, the hallway quiet except for the faint hum of the TV downstairs. Sarah was still out there, probably gloating. Mia was probably laughing. Dad was probably hiding like always. But Mom had given me a weapon, and I was going to use it. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and headed for the stairs, ready to take back what was mine. I gripped the trust agreement, its edges biting into my palm, as I descended the stairs of our Atlanta house. Each step felt heavier, like I was walking into a storm. The living room smelled of Sarah's perfume, too sweet, like candy left out too long. My stuff was still out on the lawn, a humiliating pile I couldn't face yet, but I pushed it out of my mind. Mom's letter echoed in my head. "This house is yours." I held onto those words, letting them steady me. The TV blared some reality show, and Mia lounged on the couch, her phone glowing, her legs slung over the armrest like she was queen of the place. She didn't look up as I passed, but I felt her smirk, sharp as a blade. I kept moving, straight for the kitchen, where I knew Sarah would be. She was there, leaning against the counter, pouring herself another glass of wine. Her blonde hair was perfect, her nails glossy red, but her eyes were cold when they met mine. Well, she said, her voice dripping with mock surprise. "Look who's back." She set the bottle down, slow and deliberate, like she was sizing me up. I didn't flinch. I stepped forward and dropped the trust agreement on the counter, the paper landing with a soft thud. She raised an eyebrow, glancing at it, then back at me. "What's this supposed to be?" "Proof," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "This house isn't yours, Sarah. It's mine." Mom set up a trust. It transferred to me today on my 20th birthday. I paused, watching her face, waiting for the crack in her armor. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that made my skin crawl. "You're joking, right? This is some kind of stunt." She picked up the paper, her eyes scanning the page, her smile twitching, then fading. "What is this nonsense?" she snapped, her voice rising. "This can't be legal." "It is," I said, keeping my tone calm, just like Aunt Rachel had told me. "My aunt's the trustee. You've got 30 days to move out." I held her gaze, refusing to look away. Her lips parted, but before she could speak, the garage door creaked open. Dad, David, stepped in, wiping his hands on a rag, his work boots scuffing the floor. He froze, looking between us, his face tired and drawn. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low, like he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Sarah shoved the paper at him, her movements jerky. "Your daughter thinks she owns the house." Her voice was shrill now, the cool facade cracking. Dad took the paper, his eyes scanning it slowly, his face paling. "Joe," Sarah said, stepping closer to him, her tone sharp. "Say something." He didn't. He just kept reading, his fingers tightening on the page. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the silence. "Did you sign this, Dad?" He looked up at me, his eyes sunken, like he hadn't slept in weeks. I think it was part of Lisa's will," he mumbled, barely audible. Something she wanted, in case he trailed off, his gaze dropping back to the paper. "In case what?" I pressed, my voice harder now. "In case you married someone who'd throw my life on the lawn on my birthday?" His head jerked up, guilt flashing across his face, but he didn't answer. "Emily, please," he started, but I cut him off. No, my voice was low, but it carried. "You stood there, Dad. You let her do this. You let her erase Mom from this house, and you said nothing." Sarah slammed her wine glass down on the counter, the sound sharp enough to make Mia look up from the living room. "This is ridiculous," Sarah hissed. "We've been living here for a year. You can't just kick us out like this." "I can," I said, my eyes locked on hers. "And I will." Mia stormed into the kitchen, her phone still in hand, her face twisted with anger. "Are you serious?" she spat, glaring at me. You think you can just waltz in here and act like you own everything? I turned to her, my voice calm but firm. I don't think so, Mia. I know. Sarah snatched the paper back from Dad, her hands trembling. This isn't over, she said, her eyes narrowing to slits. I'm calling a lawyer. I shrugged, my heart still racing but my resolve unbreakable. Go ahead. You've got 30 days. She glared at me, her face a mask of fury, but I didn't back down. You think you're so smart, she said, her voice low, venomous. But this isn't the end. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to match hers. You don't get to decide that. Dad looked like he wanted to vanish, his shoulders hunched, his eyes darting between us. Can we just talk about this? He said, his voice weak. Maybe there's a way. No, I said, cutting him off again. You had your chance, Dad. I turned, my journal still tucked under my arm, and walked out of the kitchen, my pulse thumping in my ears. Mia muttered something under her breath, but I didn't care. I headed upstairs, back to my room, and slammed the door behind me. The pale blue walls felt like a hug from Mom, even if everything else was stripped bare. I sat on the mattress, the trust agreement still in my hand, and let out a shaky breath. I'd done it. I'd faced her. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Downstairs, I heard Sarah's voice, sharp and fake sweet, talking on the phone, probably to some lawyer she thought could save her. Mia's music blasted again, a petty act of defiance. Ethan's door stayed shut, like always. I leaned back against the wall, my fingers tracing the edge of the silver key in my pocket. I didn't know what had opened yet, but it felt like a promise, like Mom was still fighting for me. My phone buzzed on the bed. Aunt Rachel, texting, "You okay? Did you do it?" I typed back, my fingers steady now. 30 days. They're pissed. Her reply came instantly. Good. I'll be there tomorrow. We'll go over everything. I set the phone down, my eyes drifting to the window. Outside, the lawn was dark, my things still out there. But I wasn't scared anymore. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by something stronger, something Mom had left me. Sarah thought she could push me out, erase me, take everything Mom had built. She had no idea who she was up against. This was my home, and I was just getting started. The house was quiet that night, but it wasn't peaceful. It felt like the calm before a storm, the air thick with unspoken threats. I locked my bedroom door, the click of the latch grounding me, and sat on the bare mattress, the silver key from Mom's envelope cold in my hand. I turned it over, its edges smooth, its purpose still a mystery. The trust agreement lay beside me, its bold print beneficiary, Emily Marie Carter, burning into my mind. Sarah's laughter from the kitchen earlier, her dismissal of the papers, echoed in my head. She thought she could fight this, but Mom had planned for me, and I was ready to follow through. I just needed to find the next piece. I thought of Mom's letter, her words about Aunt Rachel knowing what to do. But something else nagged at me, a memory from her note, something about a box. I stood, my heart picking up speed, and headed downstairs, past the living room where Mia's music thumped faintly through the walls. The garage door was in the kitchen, and I slipped through it, the cool, musty air hitting me like a wave. Sarah had turned the garage into her personal dumping ground. Broken chairs, a cracked mirror, boxes of junk she deemed unworthy of her new vision for the house. I shoved aside a pile of old magazines, my eyes scanning for something familiar. There, in the corner, half hidden under a tarp, was Mom's keepsake box. It was small, wooden, painted red, the kind of thing she'd loved for its quirks. She used to keep her treasures in etiquette stubs from our trips to the Atlanta Botanical Garden, letters from Dad when they were young, dried petals from her favorite roses. I knelt, my hands trembling, and pulled it free, dust coating my fingers. I flipped it over, and there it was, the silver key, taped to the underside, just like Mom's letter had promised. I peeled it off, the tape brittle but intact, and held it up to the dim garage light. It matched the one from the envelope perfectly. My breath caught. Mom had left me a map, and I was finally reading it. I tucked the box under my arm and went back to my room, locking the door again. My phone buzzed. Rachel, checking in. Find anything yet? I texted back, got the key. What's it for? Her reply was quick. Bank. Safe deposit box. Meet me at First Atlanta Bank on Peachtree tomorrow, noon. Bring ID. I stared at the message, my pulse racing. A safe deposit box. Mom had hidden something Sarah didn't know about. I set the phone down and looked at the key, its weight heavier now, like it held all of Mom's secrets. The next morning, I was up before the sun, nerves buzzing. Sarah was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, sipping coffee, her eyes bloodshot but sharp. Sleep well, she asked, her voice laced with venom. I ignored her, grabbing a granola bar and heading out. The lawn still held my things, damp from the morning dew, but I couldn't deal with that now. I drove to First Atlanta Bank, the key in my pocket, Mom's letter folded in my bag. Rachel was waiting outside, her sunglasses on, a thick folder under her arm. She looked like she was ready for war, her lips set in a tight line. You okay, kid? She asked, her voice softer than usual. Yeah, I said, though my stomach was in knots. Let's do this. We walked inside, the bank's air conditioning chilling my skin. 15 minutes later, a manager led us to a private room, all polished wood and hushed tones. He slid a metal box onto the table, checked my ID, and left us alone. Rachel nodded at me, her eyes steady. Go on. I inserted the key, my hand shaking, and turned it. The lock clicked, and the box opened with a soft creak. Inside was a stack of documents, thicker than I'd expected, a small USB drive, and a sealed envelope with my name in Mom's handwriting. My throat tightened, but I kept my face blank, not wanting to break in front of Rachel. I started with the envelope, sliding my finger under the flap. The letter inside was longer than the first, Mom's words spilling across 2 pages. Emily, if you're here, it means they tried to take everything. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you myself. I knew something was wrong with your dad after Sarah showed up. He changed, pulled away, and I saw her watching me, always watching. I didn't want to believe he'd betray us, but I couldn't risk you losing everything. These documents, the US, they your shield. There's a second trust, $200,000, locked until you show this to the estate lawyer. Rachel knows. Fight for what's yours. Don't let them make you small. Love, Mom. I looked up at Rachel, my hands trembling, the letter crinkling in my grip. She knew, I whispered. Rachel nodded, her jaw tight. Lisa was smart. She suspected David was slipping, that Sarah was pulling strings. She told me she felt pushed out of her own life. That's when she started moving things into trusts, quietly, so no one could touch you. I set the letter down and reached for the documents. They were original trust agreements, some I'd seen, some new, all naming me as the beneficiary. But the USB drive caught my eye. I held it up, its black plastic glinting. What's on this? Rachel's eyes darkened. Answers. Maybe more than you're ready for. I nodded, slipping it into my pocket. The last thing I pulled out was a stack of printed emails, dozens of them between Dad and Sarah. I skimmed the first one, dated months before Mom died. Sarah's words made my stomach turn. She's not getting better, Joe. You need to think about our future. I stopped, my breath shallow, and looked at Rachel. She was planning this, I said, my voice barely audible. Before Mom was even gone, Rachel put a hand on my arm, steadying me. Your mom didn't just leave you a house, Emily. She left you the truth. I nodded, my eyes burning, but I didn't cry. I couldn't, not yet. I gathered everything, the letter, the documents, the US band, slid them into my bag. We left the bank in silence, the weight of Mom's secrets heavy on my shoulders. Sarah thought she'd won, but she was wrong. Mom had armed me, and I was ready to fight. I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, the door locked, the USB drive from Mom's safe deposit box plugged into my laptop. The Atlanta night pressed against the window, dark and quiet, but my mind was a storm. Alex, my best friend since high school, sat beside me, 2 energy drinks sweating on the carpet. He'd shown up an hour ago, no questions asked, when I texted him, "Need help with some files. You still good with computers?" His reply had been instant. Always. Now his laptop hummed next to mine, his fingers flying across the keys as we dug into the secrets Mom had left me. The trust documents and her letter were spread out on the bed, their weight grounding me, but the USB held something else, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. "Let's see what we've got," Alex said, his voice low, like he knew we were handling something fragile. He clicked open the drive, and a folder popped up, simply labeled, "For Emily." My throat tightened, seeing Mom's handwriting in my mind, bold and slanted. Inside were files, bank statements, scanned documents, and a subfolder marked emails. I clicked it, and dozens of files loaded, each one a thread between Dad and Sarah, stretching back to before Mom died. I opened the first one, dated 6 months before we lost her. Sarah's words hit like a punch. "Joe, she's not getting better. We need to plan for what's next." Dad's reply was short. "I'm trying. It's hard." I leaned back, my breath shallow, my hands clenching into fists. "She was pushing him," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Alex nodded, his eyes still on the screen. "Keep going." We opened more, each email worse than the last. One, from 3 months before Mom's death, made my stomach churn. Sarah wrote, "Talk to the doctor, Joe. You've got influence. Use it." Dad replied, "I did. They're adjusting her care plan." I stared at the screen, goosebumps prickling my arms. "Adjusting her care plan," I repeated, my voice shaking. They were rushing her out. Alex glanced at me, his usual grin gone. "This is heavy, Em." I nodded, my jaw tight. Mom had been scared. Her letter said so. Not of dying, but of leaving me with them. And now I knew why. We kept digging, moving to the bank statements. They were meticulous, tracking Dad's savings account over 2 years. Small transfers stood out, $300 here, $600 there, all to an account in Sarah's name. Alex cross-referenced the dates with the emails, his brow furrowing. "She was skimming," he said, pointing to a total. 25 grand, over 18 months. "Your dad didn't notice." I shook my head, my chest tight. He was checked out. After Mom got sick, he just stopped paying attention. I thought of Dad's hollow eyes, his mumbled excuses whenever Sarah took over. He'd let her, and she'd taken everything as money, his spine, our home. Alex opened another file, a spreadsheet Sarah had made, tucked away in a hidden folder. It listed transfers, but one cell caught my eye, a note about prepping the house for sale after she's gone. My heart stopped. "She's gone," I said, my voice flat. "That's me. She was going to sell the house after kicking me out." Alex leaned back, exhaling hard. "She's been playing a long game." I nodded, my anger simmering steady now like a fire that wouldn't go out. Mom had known, or at least suspected, and she'd armed me for this. I grabbed my phone and dialed Aunt Rachel, my hands steady despite the rage burning in my chest. She picked up on the first ring. "Emily? You okay?" "We found everything," I said, my voice low but firm. Emails, bank transfers, proof Sarah was stealing from Dad. And she was planning to sell the house once I was gone. Rachel was quiet for a moment, then let out a sharp breath. "Good. Send it all to the lawyer. I gave you her number, right?" I glanced at the sticky note on my desk, where Rachel had scribbled the contact for a lawyer in downtown Atlanta. "Yeah, I've got it." "Okay," Rachel said, her voice all business. "Get it to her tomorrow. We're building a case eviction and fraud. Sarah's done." I hung up, my eyes drifting to the laptop screen, where Sarah's spreadsheet glowed, her betrayal laid bare. Alex looked at me, his expression serious. "You sure you want to do this? It's gonna get messy." I nodded, my jaw set. They made it messy when they threw my stuff on the lawn. He cracked a small smile, the first all night. Fair point. Let's finish this then. We spent another hour sorting files, copying everything to a cloud drive for the lawyer. The emails were the worst, each one a knife twisting deeper. Sarah had manipulated Dad, preyed on his grief, his weakness, while Mom was still fighting to stay with me. One email, sent a month before Mom died, had Sarah saying, "We'll be together by Christmas, Joe. Just hold on." I closed the laptop, my hands shaking, not from fear but from clarity. Mom had trusted Dad, and he'd let her down. But I wasn't him. I wasn't going to break. I stood, stretching my cramped legs, and looked at Alex. "Thanks for this," I said, my voice soft. He shrugged, grabbing an energy drink. "You'd do the same for me. Plus, this is some next-level detective work. I'm basically a hacker now." I laughed, a small, shaky sound, the first in days. It felt good, like a crack in the weight pressing on me. I glanced at the trust documents on the bed, Mom's letter peeking out. She'd given me more than a house. She'd given me a fight, and I was ready to win it. Outside, the house was silent, but I knew Sarah was still awake, probably plotting her next move. Mia's music had stopped, and Ethan's door stayed shut, like always. I locked my laptop in my desk drawer, the USB safe beside it, and sat on the bed, the silver key in my hand. Tomorrow, I'd meet the lawyer, hand over the evidence, and start the real battle. Sarah thought she could erase me, but she didn't know Mom had left me a shield. And I was going to use it to take back everything. The Atlanta house felt like a battlefield, every creak and whisper charged with tension. Sarah refused to back down, strutting through the rooms like she still owned them, her perfume trailing like a taunt. I locked my bedroom door every night, the USB drive and Mom's papers hidden in a shoebox under my bed. The lawyer, Ms. Carter, had everything now: mails, bank transfers, the trust documents, and she'd promised to file for eviction and fraud charges by the end of the week. But 30 days was a long time, and Sarah was making sure I felt every second of it. She started small, passive-aggressive, like she was testing me. Sticky notes appeared on the fridge: "Clean your dishes, Emily," or "Don't leave your junk in the hall." As if I was the guest. Mia took it further, slamming doors at midnight, her music blaring through the walls, lyrics sharp and angry. One morning, I found my favorite sweater, Mom's old Emory University hoodie, draped over a chair, stained with what smelled like grape soda. Mia was in the kitchen, scrolling her phone, a smirk playing on her lips. "Oops," she said, not looking up. "Guess I spilled." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, but I didn't snap. Sarah thrived on chaos, and Mia was her mini-me. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. The kitchen became their favorite stage. One day, I came downstairs to find dishes piled in the sink, cereal scattered across the counter, milk dripping onto the floor like someone had poured it just to watch it pool. Mia stood there, chewing gum, arms crossed, her eyes staring me to react. "Oh, look," she said, her voice dripping with fake surprise. "Guess you'll have to clean that up." I stared at her, my pulse pounding, but I kept my face blank. "Not my problem," I said, turning away. Her smirk faltered, just for a second. "It's your house, right?" she called after me, but I was already gone, climbing the stairs, my hands shaking with the effort of staying calm. Sarah upped the ante. I found a framed photo of Mom and me, taken at the Chattahoochee River last summer, shattered in the hallway. The glass was splintered, the frame bent, Mom's smile barely visible through the cracks. My chest tightened, a sob threatening to break free, but I swallowed it down. Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, his headphones around his neck, his face pale. "I didn't mean to," he said quickly, his voice low. "I bumped it, I swear." His eyes were wide, guilty, and for once, I believed him. I nodded, picking up the broken frame. "I know," I said, my voice softer than I meant. "But tell your sister to stop acting like a toddler." He shifted, his gaze dropping to the floor. "She's just mad," he mumbled. "She thinks you're ruining everything." I looked at him, the photo heavy in my hands. "I'm fixing what she had no right to break," I said, my voice steady. "Big difference." He nodded, barely, then slipped back into his room, the door clicking shut. I took the photo to my room, setting it on my desk, the cracked glass a reminder of why I was fighting. Sarah and Mia wanted me to crack, but I was stronger than that. That night, I met Alex in the garage, the only place Sarah hadn't claimed. We sat on old camping chairs, his laptop open, digging deeper into Dad's old email account, the one Mom had access to before she died. "Look at this," Alex said, pointing to a thread from 4 months before Mom passed. Sarah wrote, "Joe, we can't keep waiting. She's dragging this out." Dad's reply was short, "I'm doing what I can. The doctor's on board." My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. "They were talking about her like she was already gone," I said, my voice hollow. Alex nodded, his jaw tight. "There's more." He pulled up another email. "Sarah to an unknown contact. Once the house is clear, we can list it. Market's hot in Atlanta right now." I leaned back, my heart racing. She'd been planning to sell Mom's house, my house, from the start. Alex looked at me, his eyes serious. "You've got enough here to bury her, Fraud, manipulation, maybe even coercion with the medical stuff." I nodded, my anger a steady burn now, no longer wild but focused. "Good," I said. "Let's make sure the lawyer has it all." The next morning, I printed everything: emails, bank statements, the spreadsheet showing Sarah's $25,000 theft. I slid them into a folder and drove to Ms. Carter's office, a cramped space in downtown Atlanta, books stacked on every surface. She flipped through the folder, her eyebrows climbing. "This is airtight," she said, looking at me over her glasses. "Eviction's a done deal, but the fraud charges? That's a bigger fight." "You sure you're ready?" I thought of Mom's letter, her handwriting, her voice telling me to fight. "They made it ugly," I said. "I'm just finishing it." Back home, Sarah was in the backyard, yelling into her phone, a cigarette dangling from her fingers. Mia was in the living room, filming herself for some social media post, her laugh grating. Ethan stayed in his room, his door shut, his silence louder than ever. I walked past them all, straight to the kitchen, and left a copy of the eviction notice on the counter, the paper crisp and official. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Sarah would see it, and she'd know her time was running out. That night, I lay on my mattress, staring at the ceiling, the pale blue walls catching the moonlight. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. Sarah and Mia were still here, scheming, breaking things, trying to wear me down. But I wasn't the girl they'd thrown out on her birthday. Mom had given me a shield, a sword, and I was learning how to use them. I closed my eyes, the eviction notice burning in my mind, and whispered to myself, 29 days. They could fight, they could scream, but this was my house. And I was taking it back. The Fulton County Courthouse in downtown Atlanta was colder than I expected, not just from the air conditioning, but from the weight of the moment. I sat in the front row, my hands gripping a folder of Mom's documents, the trust agreement on top, its bold print a lifeline. Aunt Rachel stood behind me, arms crossed, her eyes sharp as she scanned the room. Alex had offered to come, but I'd told him I needed to do this alone. Well, not alone, MS. Carter, my lawyer, sat beside me, her briefcase open, papers neatly stacked. The room was quiet, save for the shuffle of feet and the low hum of voices. I felt every heartbeat, steady but loud, like a drum in my chest. Sarah swept in 10 minutes late, her black dress tight, her oversized sunglasses perched like she was starring in a drama. Mia trailed behind, chewing gum, her glare cutting through me like I'd stolen her spotlight. Dad, David, came last, slipping into the back row alone, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't sit with them, and that said more than words could. The judge entered, a tall woman with a no-nonsense stare, and we all stood, the room snapping to attention. Then it began. Miss Carter stood, her voice clear and calm. Your Honor, my client, Emily Carter, is the legal owner of the property at 1427 Maple Lane, Atlanta, per a trust established by her late mother, Lisa Carter. She laid out the timeline: Mom's death, the trust's activation on my 20th birthday, the eviction notice, Sarah's refusal to leave. Then came the heavy stuff. We have evidence, Ms. Carter said, that the defendant not only attempted to illegally evict my client, but committed financial fraud and coerced changes to Lisa Carter's medical care in her final months. She submitted the emails, bank statements, Mom's recorded voice, the doctor's letter confirming unauthorized changes. Each piece landed like a stone, heavy and undeniable. The judge listened, her face unreadable, as Mom's voice filled the room from the recording. I knew Sarah was dangerous, Mom said, her words steady despite the fear I could hear. I was scared, not of dying, but of leaving Emily with them. The recording ended, and the silence was deafening. The judge looked at Sarah. Do you have a response to these allegations? Sarah stood, smoothing her dress, her chin high. Your Honor, this is a personal vendetta. Emily's been hostile since I married her father. She's twisting everything. Her voice was smooth, practiced, but her hands betrayed her, fidgeting with her sunglasses. That recording, who knows when it was made? Miss Carter didn't miss a beat. The metadata confirms the date, Your Honor. And the doctor's letter verifies the care plan changes were not fully authorized. Sarah's lips pressed tight, her confidence cracking. And the money? The judge asked, her tone sharp. The $25,000 transferred to your personal account? Sarah hesitated, just a fraction too long. That was for household expenses, she said, her voice thinner now. We agreed on it. Then Dad stood, his movement sudden, drawing every eye. No, we didn't. His voice was quiet but firm, cutting through the room. Sarah whipped around, her face twisting. Joe, what are you doing? He ignored her, looking at the judge, then at me, his eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. She said she'd handle the bills, he said. I didn't know she was moving money to her own account. The room went still, Sarah's breath hitching audibly. Joe, she hissed, but he didn't look at her. The judge nodded, her pen scratching a note. Thank you for clarifying. Mia started whispering, loud and petulant, until the judge's glare silenced her. Miss, one more outburst and you're out. Mia slumped back, arms crossed. Miss Carter continued, her voice steady. Your Honor, my client has tried to resolve this peacefully, giving the defendants 30 days to vacate. They refused. Emily is the legal owner and requests an official eviction order. The judge flipped through the papers, her eyes scanning the trust, the emails, the bank records. She looked up, her gaze settling on me for a moment, then on Sarah. I've reviewed the evidence, she said, her voice even. The trust is clear. The transfer of ownership to Emily Carter is valid. The eviction notice is lawful. A pause, heavy and final. However, the financial records and recordings raise concerns that warrant further investigation. Sarah's mouth dropped open, her sunglasses slipping in her hand. Therefore, the judge continued, I'm issuing an eviction order. The defendants have 72 hours to vacate the premises. Any resistance will result in legal enforcement. I exhaled, my breath shaky, realizing I'd been holding it. Relief flooded me, sharp and warm, but it wasn't joy, not yet. Sarah exploded, her voice shrill. This is outrageous. That house is mine. I made it a home. The judge banged her gavel once, hard. You're done, ma'am. Leave now. Sarah turned to Dad, her eyes blazing. You coward, she spat. He didn't respond, his face pale, his hands clasped tight. She stormed out, Mia scrambling after her, muttering about unfairness, her gums snapping like gunfire. I stood, my folder still in my hands, and turned to Dad. He looked at me, his eyes wet, filled with regret, shame, something I couldn't untangle. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely audible. I stepped closer, my voice low. "You could have stopped this. You chose her." He nodded, slow and heavy, like the weight of it was crushing him. "I know," he whispered. I didn't say anything else. I walked past him, out of the courtroom, Rachel's footsteps steady behind me. Outside, the Atlanta sun was bright, almost mocking. Rachel caught up, her hand on my shoulder. "You did it, kid." I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah. You okay?" she asked, her voice softer now. I looked at her, the folder heavy in my arms. "Not yet," I said. "But I will be." The courthouse doors closed behind us, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the ground beneath me, solid and mine. Sarah was gone, or soon would be. The house was mine, and Mom's justice, her truth, was finally breaking through. The Atlanta house was quiet now, the kind of quiet that settles after a storm. Sarah's car was gone, the driveway empty. Mia's room stood open, clothes and makeup scattered like a hurricane had passed through. Ethan's room was bare, the bed stripped, a few crumpled papers left in the drawer. I walked through the rooms, my footsteps echoing, and sat at the kitchen table, the silence heavy but not empty. The war was over, but the scars lingered, like bruises under the skin. I wasn't the same girl who'd found her life on the lawn. I was something new, something Mom had shaped. I painted the walls myself, despite Rachel's offer to hire someone. I needed to do it, to feel the roller in my hand, the paint covering the past. The pale blue Mom and I chose when I was 15 became a deep olive green, warm and mine. Rachel stood in the doorway, sipping coffee, her eyes crinkling. "Missed a spot," she teased. I turned, grinning. "Liar." She laughed, a sound that filled the room with light. "Maybe. Just like watching you work." We spent the afternoon building shelves, unpacking boxes I hadn't touched in years. Mom's notes, my old sketchbooks, a photo of us at Tybee Island, her in a sun hat, me with ice cream on my nose. Rachel sat beside me on the floor, her voice soft. "Lisa would be so proud." I nodded, my throat tight. "I hope so." Later, I heard the front door creak. Ethan stood in the hall, holding a small box, his face shy. "Hey," he said. "Hi," I replied, surprised. He handed me the box. "Found some of your stuff in my room. Thought you'd want it." Inside was a book, Mom's old necklace, my favorite mug. "Thanks," I said. He shifted, awkward. "I'm staying with a friend. Not sure what's next." I met his eyes. "You'll figure it out." He hesitated. "You didn't deserve this." "Sorry I didn't say it sooner." I nodded. "Just speak up when it matters." He gave a small smile. "Mia's still posting, saying you faked it all." I shrugged. "Let her." He glanced around, the green walls glowing. "Feels different now." "Yeah," I said. He left, the door clicking shut. That night, I sat on the back porch with Alex, the Atlanta sky turning orange behind the pines. Mom's garden, wild but alive, bloomed with roses. "Ever think about selling?" he asked, leaning back. I shook my head. "This is mine. I'm not running." He nodded. "Good." He grinned. "For a girl kicked out on her birthday, you came back like a wrecking ball." I smiled, small but real. "Had to." I stood, walking to the garden, my fingers brushing the roses. I knelt, pulling weeds, the dirt cool under my hands. Mom's last letter, the part one hadn't read, came back to me. "Own your story. Never let it make you small." I whispered to the roses, "You didn't leave me a house, Mom." I stood, my heart steady, hands earthy. "You left me justice."